let's put our hands together and give a great welcome to Pete Ganbarg and where is she? Zeena Koda. So we usually start by asking our guest speakers to tell us a bit about their career path. So why don't we start with Zeena? Tell us about how you started, what your passion was, and tell us a bit how you got to where you are now.
Oh, boy. Let me minimize this feedback a little bit first. Like a lot of people who work in the industry, I started off as a musician, and my first thoughts were, I never want to work a fucking day job a day in my life. Here I am working at Atlantic Records now. But yeah, no, I was a musician, and I was just kind of promoting my own band, trying to figure it out. You know, at the time, MySpace started taking off, and started booking my own shows, trying to get a community together, figure out how I could connect with more bands and other artists. And I started to realize that there was like a business, obviously, behind it. And as the band kept chugging along, I realized it would be pretty cool to kind of figure out how to make this music business thing work for me and maybe to help other people get their lives together. So that kind of made me start exploring more opportunities in the record label side of things, and also started to really delve into radio at the time. I was in college and started interning at the radio station at that time, and like I enjoyed it, but didn't enjoy it as much as making music. So, you know, just kind of chipped away at that, and I got a first opportunity at Earache Records, which was a death metal label, at the Gates, for anybody who knows those kind of bands. Municipal Waste was one of my first clients to actually work on. I did PR for them, so we kind of started in PR just because I like to talk to people and to know what was going on because I was nosy, and started just kind of interning and working there. And yeah, that was my first gig. Then I got an opportunity to work at Roadrunner Records after that, which was not part of Atlantic at the time. We were indie, actually. And then after that, I worked at SiriusXM for a few years as a host. So just kind of started going through all these different changes because I got bored after a while and wanted to try different things. All the while, still stayed a musician because you got to stay true to your passion. And it was honestly the thing that really drove me because I really care about the artists and what was happening to them. And I, as an artist, knew things that would drive me insane. And it was really important for me at that point to kind of like impart the knowledge that I had acquired from a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. And yeah, that brought me to this lovely position where I am today, overseeing urban digital marketing at Atlantic Records. Little caveat to your prior introduction, but yeah, I think it's been a bumpy, crazy road, and you got to kind of just take all the chances you can along the way because you never know when they're going to come again.
Great. Pete, we have an hour for this?
Yeah, I'm old. When I was a kid, I started listening to the radio. I was 13 years old, and when you're 13 years old, you're too young to go out to parties. It was New Year's Eve. You're too young to go out to parties, but you're too old to go to bed at 7 o'clock. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I turned on the radio, and all the radio stations on New Year's Eve were playing the biggest songs of the year. And for some reason, I took out a notebook and I started writing them down. Then that led to discovering Billboard magazine and trying to figure out how I could hear all of these songs. I don't know why I was interested. It just became this thing where I needed to hear all of these songs that were being written about in these magazines. So this was pre-Spotify, pre-computers, pre-everything. And so if you wanted to be able to go listen to the music and your local radio stations weren't playing them, you had to actually go and buy the music at a record store. So in order to buy the music at a record store, you have to have money. So I didn't have money. I decided to get a job. So I decided, hey, let me become a DJ. So I went out and I bought a couple of turntables and a mixing console and some speakers, and a buddy of mine went and started DJing all the local parties, would make a couple of $100 a weekend, and would take all that money and go buy records. Between the party and the next weekend party, I would listen to all the records and then go into the party the following week and start playing the songs that I thought were hit songs from the previous week. And if people would get up and dance, I knew these songs were hits. If they gave me the finger and walked out, I knew they weren't hits. So I started training my ear without having any idea that there was a career there. I just liked listening to all this music and playing music for people at these parties. So when it came time to go to college, I wanted to find a college with a really good radio station because I liked this DJ thing and I knew that I would have access to more music to listen to. So I ended up picking a school that had a really good radio station. And a funny thing happened on the way to that school. First day freshman year, I meet a guy who says, "Oh, you're into the music business. Do you know my friend's dad? Have you ever heard of him?" And he tells me the name, Charles Koppelman.
Oh.
And I said, "No, I never heard of the guy." He's like, "No, he's a big deal. He really is." Fast forward 5 years, this guy gave me my first A&R job. And I started doing A&R for a living, and that was 30 years ago. So while I was in college, I ran the radio station, I booked all the bands, I managed some acts, and I was really teaching myself how to do A&R without really knowing what A&R was. A&R, for those people who don't know what it is, stands for Artists and Repertoire. So we are the division at a record company that's responsible for discovering, signing, and overseeing all the creative content from, the creative recording content of all the artists. So recently, this year, I celebrated my 30th anniversary of doing major label A&R, and for the last 11 years, I've been the head of A&R for Atlantic, and it's the best record company I've ever worked for, and I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I get paid to listen to music. So what I've been able to do in the last 11 years of running A&R for Atlantic is I've been able not only to sign artists and develop artists, but also find amazing young A&R executives and mentor and develop them. So I've got kids who have been with me literally from the age of 16 who are now 29, 30, 31, and starting to sign their own acts and have success with them. My former assistant signed Lizzo, who's now exploded. So it's amazing for Lizzo, and it's also amazing for this kid who was my assistant on my desk, answering my phones and booking my travel, learning how to find an artist, make a record, and oversee all aspects of the creative recording process for that artist, and is now having massive success himself.
Thank you, that's pretty good. So Pete, you heavy running an A&R department, what do you look for? It's a big question. What do you look for when you're going to sign an artist? So what's your criteria, or the criteria that you set the standard for your own staff?
I get asked a lot, how has the music business changed, from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? And the A&R part of that answer is I don't think it's changed at all. Because remember, the definition of A&R is the artist and the repertoire, meaning the act and the song, right? So back when you were doing A&R, it was the same thing. You were looking for the star artist recording the undeniable copyright, right? When you talk about a copyright, you're talking about the underlying composition of the song itself. And so when you pair an unbelievable singer with an incredible song, incredible evergreen copyright, whether it's Frank Sinatra singing Strangers in the Night, or Aretha Franklin singing Respect, or Whitney Houston singing I Will Always Love You. You're talking about from the 50s to the 60s to the 80s, incredible artists who did not write those songs. Those were songs that were found for them by an A&R guy, a publisher, a producer. That hasn't changed. What I try to make sure that I do, and any member of my staff does, is to set the bar so impossibly high that the only people that we're signing are future superstars. I say to an artist, I only want to sign you if you have the drive and the vision to one day be the biggest artist in the world. Because if you don't, we're going to work our asses off for you. And we were talking about this before. If we work harder than the artist does themselves, that's a problem. So it's always about, is this artist somebody who wants it as badly as we do and who is going to work their asses off as much as we are and is surrounding themselves with the right people? Because you'd be surprised how many shitty managers there are out there, and how that gets in the way of what it is the artist needs to do. So I try to make sure that my staff, knows the red flags to look for, and ultimately is signing future headliners. Okay, I know that we saw this artist last night in front of 20 people in a small room, but can we shut our eyes and imagine them headlining Madison Square Garden? And if we can, and we feel that we understand the right path to take them on their creative arc from where they are right now to make sure they're recording amazing music and making great records that people are going to buy, stream, sing along to, then we should sign the artist.
This is what makes you the kind of A&R man you are. Zeena, when do you get involved with an artist?
Oh, we get involved in various stages of the process. Like, there'll be times where he has an artist that they're trying to court, and we'll kind of just discuss with them like what we offer, and obviously like give them a background on the types of things that we look to do as digital agents of the actual artist. I think that one of the biggest things like that I want to touch on that P mentioned is that although the talent and all these things are very important, those things don't change because you can't change that in an artist as time goes by, right? Those are the things that like truly do matter to their career and their fan base, is that now you do have to have kind of like an inkling, even at the least, of like business savvy in terms of being able to create your own presence, right? The internet don't sleep. You have to have your presence build out, and you have to exist on the internet if you're any kind of artist. Because the first thing that even when you get the attention of somebody who might be an A&R, like exploring the opportunity, you need to have a presence for them to take a look at. What's on your Instagram? Do you have a website? Do you have your music up? Is it easily available? Are they able to kind of get a vibe for you? Like, all of these things are your first line impression. And if your digital presence doesn't have any finesse and care, you never know when you might be losing that opportunity. So those are the things that I think are super important, even bringing to A&R. Like, these are things that you need to kind of be building at the inception of like your artistry.
I mean, for me, just to cut in for a second, that's less important than the music itself, because I'm very old school. I want to listen and be moved by the music that I'm hearing. And if the social presence is awesome, great. If there's like a real working community behind the artist, fantastic. But if it's not, like as they used to say, if it's not in the grooves, it's like you can have all the followers in the world, but no one is going to give a shit about the music.
Well, you're a gem. You're a true music lover. You should appreciate that, because that doesn't always exist. But it doesn't help to have your business sorted. Just because, look, just keeping it real. Say you're not trying to get signed to Atlantic Records, right? Say you're trying to get signed to any record label on earth other than Atlantic Records. Say you're just trying to find a manager. How are they going to know who you are? How are they going to know how your music sounds? How are they going to know, what traction or buzz you have? And it shouldn't be your first priority, but it should be somewhere in the mix of what you're doing. We're just keeping it real, guys.
Thank you for the clap.
Thank you for the clap. A plan, look, I have a weird controversial thought that like many things in your life need a marketing plan and a timeline. That comes down to making repairs in your house, to planning weight loss, to planning anything, right? Because if you don't have a fucking mission, you're not gonna make it happen. So you should approach your music career and your artistry in the same way, right? If you want to make the best product possible, you need to give yourself the breath and the time to really feel it and engulf it as an artist, but to also think about how you want it represented, because this is your baby, right? You're birthing your baby. You want to put your baby out into the universe in the best way possible.
It's also really important to have a great team around you.
Absolutely.
To use 21 Pilots as an example, when I first met those guys, they came in with a team. And a lot of that team is still around 10 years later. And it was almost like a family where this is your role, this is my role, this is his role, this is her role. And they understood that, and they all got to work, and they all outworked each other to the point where when they were getting to a place where they were ready to play arenas, it wasn't a stretch, because it was kind of part of the initial mission statement of not only what the band was going to do, but the team around them is going to help them do.
So a long-term marketing plan for them. I guess where we get involved really is just, when an artist is signed, really helping to really look at what their digital presence is, to make sure that we're doing the nerd shit, right? Looking at the analytics, making sure to like dot your I's, cross your T's online, because believe it or not, one little mistake in spelling or whatever the case is can actually really hinder you, streams-wise, progression-wise, like all the metadata, all of those things really, really matter, which is why I really harp on being careful and just really thinking about those things and keeping a close eye on those things, because they do matter in long-term strategy, because you want people to easily find your music, and sometimes that can be difficult based off of your name, based off of all these small little, like we have a few, there's a band Arizona that we have. It's definitely pretty tough to find them online, Just thinking about those things too, and I know like I don't want to be a downer or like put any of that stuff in front of artistry, because I do believe that artistry does come first. As an artist, it sometimes kills me that it doesn't come first for a lot of people. But I think it is important to kind of think about those things, especially as you want, think about monetization and thinking about building a career around music. Those things do matter. So we really try to help our artists kind of develop those strategies and kind of pay attention to those things. Content is such a big deal in digital right now. And content really is broadened across the board between audio content that's outside of just what we're doing on the music side, video content. You need to be a content producing machine on the artist side, and you just need to figure out what your niche is and kind of ride it. We also figure out different campaigns around the artist's songs that don't have anything to do with the artist, using outside content creators, help to bring other branding and lifestyle opportunities, whether it be sports, beauty, women's interests, political interests, social justice interests, anything that helps to really build the narrative of each of these artists. So that can be completely different for any artist, any genre. And the biggest part of our job is really to get to know the artists and really take that to heart and really explore and research different opportunities, bring a lot of things to the table that they love, a lot of things they fucking hate over and over and over. But you know what? It's really a fun process, because you really get to know more about the artist. And once you build the rapport, and to watch it just kind of explode and really just be in sync and be in tune, there's a lot of amazing things that you can create as a team. And like Pete said, like your management and the people you surround yourself with are massively important. Look at the way they behave, look at the way they speak to people, really take a look at their business acumen, because all of that matters in the scheme of the entire plan.
When you sign an artist and you're a real artist development company, what's your measure of the arc of artist development? What's your measure for success? Because we know that every artist doesn't happen on that first record or out of the box.
We have a saying at Atlantic. It's a buzzword recently. It's called incremental growth. So as long as we are seeing incremental growth, that's good. If there's no growth or incremental decline, that's not good. But the thing that separates Atlantic from a lot of other places is that we are a very, very, very patient, artist development friendly record company. And the reason that we can be so patient is because nobody at Atlantic on the senior management level leaves. Everyone's been there a very, very long time. Of all the department heads, I've been there, I think, 11 years now, and I'm still the rookie. Head of radio's been there 40 years. Head of sales been there 40 years. CEO's been there 30 years. When you have that type of stability, there is no rush. You can throw the clock out the window. You don't have to do any stupid shortcuts. You just do what is in the best interest of the artist, which means that tour, 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 music, 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 content, 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 repeat. And it's a lot of work. So when we were starting with 21 Pilots, my thought was, these guys, I would come to Columbus and I would see them here, and they were the Beatles here. But you go 20 minutes north and nobody knew who they were, So for us, it was like, we're going to throw the clock out the window. We're going to throw like every calendar, like just ignore it and try to replicate what has been going on with the years and years of hard work in Columbus, in Cincinnati, in Pittsburgh, in Cleveland. You know, just go and do it regionally. And radio is always the last thing on our to-do list. We do not want to talk about radio until we know this artist has a fan base. Where I got in a fight with my boss because when we put out the Blurry Face album, he came to me and said, okay, we're going to take Tearing My Heart to Top 40 radio. And I said, no, we're not. He's like, what do you mean? Everything's going so great. Nope, we're going to keep it at alternative, and I want Top 40 radio to come to us. And if Tearing My Heart is the song they want to play, we'll know. If not, maybe it's the next one. And the next one was Stressed Out, and they came to us and said, okay, we can go to radio now, and you know, the rest is history.
It's funny, you guys have answered so many questions, or questions that I wanted to ask.
In other words, we've ruined your whole agenda.
No, not quite, because I have some
Pull 'em
questions
out.
that have already been pre-screened, and you've answered why 21 Pilots. How would you suggest somebody gets into A&R? Do you have internships?
Sure. A&R is a very, very, very strange occupation because we do not listen to music the way that most people listen to music. Listening to music for me is like high intensity, like a workout. You know, I'm like very, 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 like all Robert De Niro, go all in when I'm listening. And it's you know, it's definitely strenuous, and it definitely takes a lot out of you because I'm very jealous of people who can listen to music while they vacuum the house. I can't do that. I have to be listening to every lyric and every word and every arrangement choice and everything. And it's a lot of work, and it's kind of freakish behavior. And if you have that type of freakish behavior, you can qualify to do A&R. When somebody comes to me and says, I want to do A&R for Atlantic, I sit with them, and I'll know within 30 seconds if they're an A&R person or not. You know, the way that, you know, I'm sure that when you ran an A&R department, you did the same thing. There was another kid who works for me. He's 30 now. He's been working for me since he's 16. And this is kind of a funny story where, stop me if it goes on too long.
Keep going.
But before I got to Atlantic, I had my own company. And I worked out of my house. And I had a guy who would come and fix my computers. This is before I converted from PC to Mac. I had a PC, and the guy came and fixed my PC, and we became friends. And he says to me one day, he's like, my kid is interested in having me invest in these musical artists that he's found. If I give you some CDs to listen to, this was, you know, 15 years ago, can you tell me if these artists are worth investing in? And I'm like, yeah, you're probably wasting your time, but no problem. And he gives me the music, and I listen to the first CD, and I'm like, huh, this is better than I thought it would be. Listen to the second one. Huh, that's good too. By the time I had the same reaction on the third one, I was less interested in any of these, less interested in what these artists were, and more interested in the one person who could find these needles in a haystack to actually have 3 CDs, 3 artists locally that were actually decent. So I said, your kid found these acts? He's like, yes, he did. I said, well, your kid may have an ear. I'd like to meet him. So the next day, the kid comes over, and within 10 seconds, you know, you could see where this story's going, opens the door, and I'm like, that's not the kid. He's like a football player, linebacker. You could just tell he wasn't an A&R guy. And I said to him, I'm like, did you find these bands? He's like, no, my friend did. I said, well, can you call the friend up and have him come over too? So he calls his friend. The kid comes over, and 5 seconds, I'm like, you're an A&R guy, and he says, what's that? I said, what grade are you in? He's like, I'm in 11th grade. I said, tomorrow after school, you're going to come over, and I'm going to start teaching you everything I know about A&R and music and how to listen. And that was 15 years ago, and he's now a senior A&R executive with massive success at Atlantic. So you could just tell, you know, like, I'm sure, you know, your skill set is you know a bullshit influencer, you know? I know an A&R person. You know, I could spot an A&R person from 100 feet away.
Totally.
We have a lot of music makers and a lot of quote, unsigned bands. So 4 bands have been signed here since the beginning of the year. We also have a radio station, 102, CD 1025, which is one of the last remaining privately owned, locally programmed, community-minded stations. They break records, they're an indicator station. Most of our music makers want to know, how do they get to you? How do they get to Atlantic, to your ears? Since you're really looking for that 21 pilots. What would you suggest, Pete?
I used to answer the question, hey, how do I get signed to a record label? By saying, stop trying. Concentrate on making your music. Concentrate on being the best lyric writer, the best musician, the best singer, the best, you know, arranger, whatever it is you do. And it always goes back to what we talked about before. Put an amazing team around you, hold the bar really high, make great music, and we will find you. And I still believe in that.
That's a good question. You have a local promotion person that works CD 1025. How frequently, if at all, do you guys get turned on to a band by a local or regional promotion person?
Sometimes. It doesn't happen as much as it used to because pre-internet, there were a lot more secrets. And now if there is an artist who's selling 500 tickets in a market like Columbus, I'm going to know about it before the radio station tells me about it.
Do you have a relationship with Scott Steiner? Because Scott, you know, was probably the person who really developed through his system of his 4 venues in the arena that really worked. 21 Pilots.
Great live music town. Take advantage of that too. Great live music.
Yeah, Scott basically puts on 500 shows a year. He's been working bands now. He did it with Walk the Moon. He's doing it with a band called Cousin Simple, which are basically that far from getting signed to Elektra. And we've got bands that really work a lot. Right. They also get played on 1025. So you need to get that information to your ears. Well, 1025 breaks artists, local artists. So if Randy were to call you up and say, hey, Pete, there's a band really working here.
There's a lot of music out there. If we get a call from somebody we know, we take it seriously and we listen. I do a lot of listening. My staff does a lot of listening. Unfortunately, 99% of what we listen to isn't great. And it's our job to be, you know, the arbiters of what it is that Atlantic is going to sign. And when we say yes, it's not as simple as saying, okay, great, you're in. It's millions of dollars in investment. From recording to marketing to promotion to videos to all these things. We are our band's partners when it comes to merchandising, when it comes to touring, sometimes when it comes to publishing. There's a lot of money that we invest in our artists, and if we choose wrong, the company is going to lose money, and we're probably all going to be out of jobs. So we have to choose right.
Do you pick stuff up, or I mean, how frequently, or maybe this is a general question, from independent labels?
Not as much as we used to, because the independent labels, everyone has access to the DSPs. So an independent label, depending on what the aspiration and goals of the artist are, an independent label can be a great ally for a long time.
So why don't we just open it up to questions, and I hope you guys have a lot of good questions tonight.
So I just wanted to know, what do you see for the future of record labels with streaming services trying to like eliminate the middleman, and with artists choosing to go the independent route and using social media instead of, you know, labels?
Ooh. I mean, the record label still is a huge machine for you, and I think that there's a lot of things that we do, a lot of sacrifice that we even as like employees and like humans make to really support and champion our artists. Like, there's so many connections within the building that each of us individually have that kind of connect together, right? Like, there are ways for you, if you're an independent artist, to kind of get your career cooking. utilizing obviously those DSPs, getting some visibility. I know he's talking about this, this indie record label, this indie radio station that's here. I mean, I work in the hip hop side. SoundCloud has existed. That's our indie, radio station really for a lot of hip hop artists, right? Like it's been cooking up hits that were coming for a long time. I think it's really important for people to realize though, that level up your career, you need the resources that the record label brings, to be honest. And if it's not a record label, it's a management team that has those same kind of connections and resources. There's different models now. I'm not gonna say like that one model is the only model, but I think there are ways, if you are an independent artist, for you to kind of like figure out career, but it's really, really tough without this team literally fighting for you every step of the way to make it to the same level. There's just so many different levels and levers that we can pull, years of strategy, years of like trial and error that we've all kind of gone through, and just, knowledge that we can bring to any artist for their career.
It's very challenging to do it yourself because there is a lot of noise out there. Let me ask you guys a couple of questions. Do you know how many songs are uploaded to Spotify every day? 40,000 songs a day. So if you're trying to get your song up there and you don't have help, you don't have voices in the choir saying, nah, this one, then chances are, 40,000 songs a day, multiply that by 7 days in a week, and 4 weeks in a month, and 12 months in a year, and that number is just going to get bigger and bigger. Here's another question. How many people do you think work at Atlantic Records in the United States? 400 people work for Atlantic Records in the United States. That is more people than any other record label in America. Everybody, like Zeena said, has a specialty. You want to make the best record that you could possibly make, whether that's access to songwriters, producers, studios, engineers, whatever it is, musicians. That's the A&R skill set. That's 30 years of what I've been doing and my crew's been doing. You want to figure out how you are going to maximize your social media presence. That's what Zeena and her staff do. Radio, I've got the greatest radio crew in the world. You want to do that yourself? Cool, no problem. But good luck competing with those 40,000 songs every day. And tomorrow there'll be 40,000 more. It all comes down to what your goal is as an artist. Not every artist needs a major label, but if the artist wants to be the biggest artist in the world, then you're going to need help.
How do you find those helpers? How do you get yourself positioned on Spotify?
You need,
If you're not a signed artist.
There are algorithms that they look at to see, are people listening to your music, are people saving your music, are people sharing your music, and if they're not, they're going to move on to something else.
I mean, there's third-party companies that claim to do some of that stuff, but again, it's a mixed bag. You don't know, right? Like, do you have $3,000 to invest in that?
Be very careful on how you spend your money.
Exactly, because like each of these services that we offer on a daily basis to our artists could cost you upwards of like $3,000 to like $10,000 depending on what that service is. So like we're literally an army every day fighting for our artists and like getting behind the product and like envisioning what it could be and kind of like, building out a strategy. So all of those things are super important. And yeah, I mean, I agree, really like maybe not for everybody, but if you really want to be at the top of your game, it's going to take that army to get you there.
My name is Skylar Harris. I am currently a senior at Ohio State University. I am both the college marketing representative at Ohio State for Sony Music, as well as the president of the Music Industry Club, which helped to break 21 Pilots when they were still here in Columbus. Throwing a name out there. I have two questions, if that's all right. The first question is kind of going off of what he said. So obviously, major labels still play a huge role in breaking artists and getting them as big as they are and getting them things like Rolling Stone covers and things like that. But I know a lot of artists going forward, because of artists like Taylor Swift, who just signed a new deal with Republic, as well as artist, Chance the Rapper, who's independent, they might come to you and say, hey, we want possession of our music when we sign. We don't want to give those rights to you. Do you see record labels kind of buying into those deals, and how do you see record labels making money from that going forward?
I think every record label is going to be different, and every record label is going to have their own philosophy on what it is their business model is. For Atlantic, the ownership of the masters is very important, and that's not something that we, like I said before, we are putting millions and millions and millions of dollars into your artistry and your music. We are not a rental company. You want a rental company, go somewhere else. We want to be in partnership with these artists for a long time. Come, meet us, understand what it is we do, and that'll answer the question of why we should own the masters.
It's the music business. Emphasis on business. Give it all you got.
In your ideal candidate?
Oh my God, this is a good subject. I'm actually hiring for assistant right now. I'm at the final process of it. And I get a lot of people like yourself, just kind of like at the tail end of their college career, trying to figure out how to make it happen. I would say value your internships and the relationships that you make in your internships very closely. When you're at an internship, do not fucking phone it in, because there's nothing worse to me than who is this? What are they doing here? Do they even care that they're here? If you're gonna spend the time to do the internship, really try to learn, even if you don't like it, honestly. Just try to learn exactly what's going on there and make yourself a presence, right? I've had tons of interns that I've put on to other jobs just, because I thought that they were great, and maybe it didn't work out in that specific company, but I saw something great in them and I wanted to pass it on. And especially from a female point of view, I was very passionate, about kind of spreading the love there, because it is a tough road at times for us. I would say really, do some cold LinkedIn emails or some real reaching out, and try to get some informational calls on. I mean, I'm gonna be 36 and I reach out to people 3 or 4 times a week on LinkedIn just to understand what they do, right? To understand what is their function within specific companies. I take informational calls, the head of digital at Michael Kors called me up and was like, I want to learn about the entertainment industry. I was like, cool, let's have lunch, let's figure it out, because I want to see the way that they market their projects, understand the mechanisms they use, understand the companies they use. Maybe there's some crossover, right? Be curious. Be curious, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and you're gonna get a lot of no's. You're gonna get a lot of rejection, but that's just building you up for exactly what this industry is. And honestly, frankly, any job that you're gonna go into, rejection is just part of the equation. And if you want it, you're gonna keep thirsting for it and going for it. And start really exploring, if you're looking at marketing, really just start exploring the different facets of digital marketing and social media marketing and all the different corners of it, right? Because there's CRM, there's email marketing, there's some really interesting parts of it that are a little bit editorial adjacent. So I think that when you say marketing in college, you don't really understand the nuance of what that means in a workplace. So start kind of researching some of those things, because it will give you a deeper understanding of what roles you can start taking on as an assistant. Hope that helps.
Hey, hi, this is Miles from Marvin the Robot. So first of all, for the fellow from Atlantic, I'm so happy to hear the things that you said about really caring about careers and about artistry. I don't know if everyone knows the history of Atlantic, but it's one of the few record labels that was actually started by fans. I think the first record label was just a furniture company that wanted to sell cabinets.
That's
and
all
they put
true.
turntables in them, and they printed records so that they could sell cabinets. And Atlantic was actually started by dudes that were obsessed with music. And it's one of the few labels like that has lived longer than 8 minutes. So it's kind of cool to hear that culture is still there at that company. That's
100%.
I don't know, one of the best things I've heard all week.
Thank you.
We care.
For the digital marketing lady, one of the things that frustrates me a lot in the recent history is there's kind of this algorithm drive, especially YouTube. We're going to use YouTube as an example. Twitch is also another good example. Where the really popular content on there is the production value is crazy low. It's just dudes that are willing to spend like 2 or 3 hours a day just on the internet, you know? And there's not necessarily, like, it's infuriating to someone that like went to college and is like, you need to care about lighting, and then like everything on the visual plane needs to like add to it to just like watch like people playing video games and stuff. But like, that's not really what I'm getting at. Is like, you know, so there's this drive as a musician, like I need to be pumping out 2 or 3 hours of something just to even like stay visual. But then at the same time, doing that, like you just start pumping out crap instantly. So can you give some advice on the fine middle ground between just being out there every day and like only showing up when you have something good to say?
Did you lose some subscribers at one point? Are you burned? No, that's a good point, honestly, and it's kind of a really big push and pull, right? Blames some of these platforms too, because they change their algorithmic, you know, like their algorithmic plans constantly, like to the point where we don't even know sometimes. Like Twitter, have you noticed now that it's for you content? So you're not really organically seeing all of the things on Twitter from your followers. You're seeing what they've deemed tailored for you. So like, just remember that no matter when you're on the internet, right? And we're all on the internet constantly, you're always seeing something curated for you, whether you like it or not, by who you're following, by the way the algorithms are set up, and sometimes you just don't know. You don't know what's gonna come across your board. I think, again, it kind of goes back to the artistry factor, right? And like what I said about making a marketing plan for every part of your life, right? And it seems a little excessive and a little aggressive, but I'm from New Jersey, so that's how we do it. Yeah. You have to be calculated in your plan, and maybe it's not, if you're not feeling something as an artist, you don't need to film that day, right? But maybe you give yourself a goal of filming one thing a week on the day that you're fucking feeling it, right? Where you're like, yeah, this is coming out. I think if you give yourself some realistic goals and just stick to them, you can start to gain an audience. And another part of that too is when you're putting content up on these platforms, how are you tagging it? How are you promoting it? What do you know, like, how are you getting this message across to your community? All of these things, if you're putting content out, you're building it around a community, and if that community doesn't exist, you need to figure out how to do it. Utilize your hashtags on Instagram. Make sure to comment on other people's shit. Make sure to make people, you know, make people within those communities think that you care, right? A lot of times I think that, you know, people in general or artists or creators, like, don't look at the like real big YouTube creator hacks, right? And a lot of it is just engaging with other people on the platform. There's a lot of like for like that happens on all of these platforms, and that's another part of it too. It's not just creating that content, but it's tagging it right. It's, you know, creating a presence within that community. And I think steadily these things like incrementally actually do grow. You just can't expect it to explode overnight. I mean, you never know. You can have a moment where you have a tweet that takes off, like a piece of media that takes off that gets hundreds of thousands of views, and you have no clue how it happened. But that's sometimes when the algorithm actually works in your favor, right? So I think it's just kind of creating the right content, thinking about the platforms that you're going to put it on, and not burning yourself out, right? Like, you can cross-pollinate some of the content on different platforms and keep a steady flow, but not an obnoxiously steady flow, right? You don't need to post every single moment, every single day. Find something that works for you, put out quality shit, and your audience will resonate with it if they exist. Hope that helps.
Hey, Jimmy Toland, I play for Bobaflex. I got a question for you, Pete, about something you said about 21 Pilots and how you didn't go to radio until after they were built up in various markets around, after they already had an established draw in Columbus.
Correct.
Could you walk me through some of the steps you went to gain following around the country without radio?
Yeah, most of it was touring, because these guys were so good live that when we first saw what they were capable of here, it was all right, now let's take this nationally and then globally. So by the time that the audiences outside of Columbus started to see what was already going on here, there was a natural word of mouth and a buzz that built to the point where we were able to get the attention of the gatekeepers and the promoters and the radio stations and the journalists and everybody else. And to the band's credit, they started writing better songs and making better records. So if you listen to the earliest stuff that they made on their own to the things that they've made since. They're learning and they're growing and they're working harder too. So we're all in it together, but it was definitely organic, building on what was happening here already and then taking it market by market.
I don't know if any of you here were at our Music Business Monday when we had Scott Steinecker, Timothy Eddings, and Randy Malloy from CD 1025. And if Timothy Eddings is a smaller promoter, he does Rumba and a few other, Athenaeum. He said, if you, one, are good, but two, if you're able to put 40 or 50 people, or even 25 in seats, he will give you the ability to play. Some people say, well, how do I get my music to you? And both he and Randy said, you see that? That's a door. Try knocking on it. We have people in this city. We're so fortunate that we have music people, we have promoters. We're a small, large city, so you can get to these people, but you need to work on your craft yourself. You need to build, not the greatest, largest audience in the country, but a significant following here. And that, if you've got the goods, will exponentially grow because you'll have the ability to get the opportunity in Columbus. Next question.
Question right here.
This is a question for Pete. My name is Reggie. I'm actually a mix engineer and a producer, working with like 4 great talented artists right now. How important is it for an artist to have a unique sound and to work on their brand, like sonically?
I think it's really important. I think that it's going back to what we said before about how much competitive music is out there, that if there's something that sounds like I've heard it before, I'm not interested. I'm interested in things that are going to stand out, that are going to be unique sonically, unique artistically, because our job, it's not about what we think, it's ultimately about what we think you all will think, because we are signing things that hopefully will appeal to as broad an audience as possible. And to really work on the career artists who are going to be around for a long time, they've got to be making music that is going to transcend what everybody else is doing. And that's not easy, but that's what we strive to.
As a matter of fact, Reggie has a couple of projects, artists that do have that unique sound. He played one for me. I spent the evening at the studio making him go through every single track. So he's on the right track. You're welcome.
Yay, Reggie.
Hey, I'm in it for the music.
What? I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, of course. You would, of course. I work with Rico Nasty. She's a unique ass bitch, and I love her. and it's actually interesting because, you know, when I got to Atlantic 2 years ago, she was an artist that I don't think that many people off the bat would understand, but me being somebody who's worked in hip hop and worked in rock, really understood her vibe, really understood what she was getting at. And I think that her unique voice has really carved out a specific lane for her over the past few years. And you just see, like, now she's at over 1 million on Instagram, and she really has had a lot of success with the fashion world, and really like built a specific feminist vibe that you don't see in a lot of other artists. And I think it's incredible. And I think that the uniqueness of her voice and the kind of spirit that she brings and a delivery that isn't conventional really has made her a completely different artist. And I think that, you know, people need some fresh perspective on that side. Like, we all hear things that sound alike. It's not a foreign concept. You want to hear something new and something different. And when you couple that with great artistry, that creates a superstar.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Hi, Brian Frost. I'm a digital consultant at Accenture. The reason that I say that is because I know how important it is to have a digital footprint.
Thank you.
So my question, trust me, we see eye to eye. So my question specifically for you is, we know for Atlantic Records that you're investing millions of dollars into these artists to make sure that they have the right target audience and also have that engaged following. But for the people around here that don't have $1 million budgets and maybe have a couple of $100, what platforms would you recommend for them, as well as for me, to start in? And also, what budget would you what budget would you allocate to those artists so they can be able to get that audience?
You're biting me in the ass for talking about marketing plans right now.
I know my marketing.
I think it depends. Like, all right, if you're an independent artist, like this question has actually been asked to me and my friends, right? Like, they're like, yo, I have this show coming up. How much should I allot towards X, Y, and Z? I think that if you're trying to sell tickets to a show, utilizing Instagram stories and Facebook to get your ticket sales up is worth the $200-300 to do hyper-targeted ads. Anytime you're doing something where you're trying to sell tickets or express like a tour or anything that's in the live space, there's a direct return on it, right? So it's worth spending, I don't know, between $300 to $500 just to at least augment that to make sure that you're getting your return, because you're gonna be getting butts in the seat. You're going to be getting the potential merch sales off of that. You're gaining new fans, and that's worth targeting people for. Facebook, tried and true for that. It's interesting. Even despite all the different other platforms that exist, Facebook actually does pretty well for that. Instagram stories, as I mentioned, too, because of the swipe ups. Again, it kind of just really depends on the artist. I know it's kind of a cop out, but it's a feel, it's a vibe, and I guess it comes with the eons of experience in a specific area. But if you're a younger artist, a really underrated ad platform for younger artists, especially young hip hop artists, is Snapchat. Because Snapchat, you can still swipe out, right? And the swipe outs on Snapchat are like the swipe through rates are actually pretty high. You'd be surprised. And they have kind of flexible rates, and it's a platform where you can kind of experiment with creative because it's a little less scrutinized than others, and they're really quick ads. And if you think about the behavioral patterns of like a 14-year-old to 24-year-old, nobody wants to sit around and watch a full minute ad, right? Nobody wants to sit around and watch a 15-second ad. So Snapchat's little, 10-second jam definitely works out for them. I think it's kind of just being smart about your money, right? Like, and you got to spend money to make money, right? And you have to invest in your own business, right? Like I have a podcast, and I've always been apprehensive to invest money, but I have to practice what I preach, right? And I've been allotting like $1,000 budget every few months for it to try to experiment with these things, because I don't know what could work, right? The unfortunate part about advertising is sometimes you're lighting it on fire, right? But when it hits, it really hits. And I think it's being smart about the pathway that it takes to get your creative to the target audience. And I think it's also thinking about what that target audience is and what the adjacent affinities might be to it, right? Like, what is the lifestyle that this person lives? Like, fashion's actually phenomenal at it, right? Especially as a woman, if you look at a pair of shoes, sure enough, you're gonna see another kind of similar pair of shoes show up on your Instagram stories feed, right? And you realize, like, wow, A, this phone is listening to me. And B, those affinities really matter when you're searching for things, when you're liking things, because all of that data is going back into those resource platforms, right? So yeah, what I would say is try to just budget out little incremental sets of money and trial things, and your creative is the number one thing. If your creative is whack, people aren't gonna look at it. If it just looks like out now, it boils my blood. No shit, it's out now. And I think that's actually interesting because, other people on the marketing side sometimes have a different perspective. They're like, why doesn't it say out now? People don't know it's out now. I'm like, when you, as a human being, look at a piece of content, we all know now. We're past that hump, right? Like, the intuition is next level. We're in voice marketing at this point. We're past needing all of that information. So it's thinking about clever, fun ways. We've all seen little plays off of social media design, I'll say, just kind of almost that meta feel, right? Of the internet shit in ads. And it works because that's the way that we're looking at the internet, right? We're looking at it in that way, and people like those kind of things, and it becomes less adsy that way. So thinking about the creative, incremental budgets, and experimenting on different platforms, and if there's a return, AKA money to make, put a little bit more money towards it.
Hi, I'm Roger Phelps. I work here in town for Promo West AEG as an assistant GM at the Basement A&R. I tour manage a band here in town as well.
What band?
I tour manage a band called Public, which were recently signed by Island 3 weeks ago, in large part because of TikTok. So digital marketing is a thing. and then Sarab is the artist that I manage here in town. My question is kind of a personal one. I've one about me and one about the incredible artists I work with. First for me, I started in college radio, booking shows, running the station, all that jazz. Came out of college, started interning at Promo West, went out to LA, did an internship at Glass Note Records, and I'm here where I am, and I feel like I've come a long way, and I feel extremely blessed to, have been able to do the things I have. Here I am at a point where I have an artist that's, signed to a major label. I'm also working with Promo West AEG, and have a promising artist on the management side as well. Can you give some advice to the fear of shutting doors and picking one path and not worrying about, where I'm going in the future?
I think that now more than ever, everyone wears multiple hats. And if I were you, I would just continue to keep doing everything. Because if you look at, Zeena just said it herself, she's got her podcast and she's got a job. And, my A&R guys, they all manage, they all have production companies. I have a publishing company. It's all part of the same thing. It's, if I were you, I would do as much as you can, as long as you're passionate about it, and ultimately, the decision will become clear when you have to make a choice, if you have to make a choice.
That's really good advice. I mean, like I mentioned, I was a radio DJ in a band. I worked at the Fader for 7 years. I was a freelance writer. Now I oversee Urban Digital. But during that time, all that shit came together, right? So you never know. You got this.
Sorry, can you repeat the last sentence of that? Sorry.
So rude. Thank you. Look, you have to wear many different hats to figure out where you want to go in life, right? I don't consider this my last stop in life, right? And also, you never know what opportunities could open up on either of those sides. And also, you never know where any of those gigs could go, right, at any given moment, because unfortunately, the music business is very fickle as well. So, I agree totally with Pete saying, just while you're still remaining passionate and it's still feeling good for you, keep going with it, And then if you feel a little heat turning up on one side of it, absolutely turn it up higher, There's no problem with kind of parsing down and investing in any moment. When I actually took this job, I whittled down everything that I was doing, side work. I was producing podcasts and doing different things. And I wanted to really focus on what I was doing and building a team and understanding how infrastructurally the business really worked within a major label. So I did that for 2 years. And then finally in the last year, I've been able to kind of pick up a few additional things. But you just got to keep going.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Real quick, on the artist side, the artist I manage in town here had a huge success with one of his singles that we released a few years back, and I've done the LinkedIn cold emailing and DMing of some of the Spotify curators after research who put him on a few different Spotify playlists. How do you suggest reaching out to those people in a more professional manner, or is DMing and LinkedIn the way to go?
Did you get them on TikTok?
No.
Did you upload the track to TikTok?
No.
Because the beauty of TikTok actually is that it can resurrect tracks from years ago, right? And it can resurrect tracks that nobody even knew. So I think it's worth giving a shot. And keep hitting them up. Stalk them. Stalking works. But don't get creepy.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Tyler. I'm in a band called Funkware. I got my bass player right here. Manager's somewhere in the back somewhere. My question was, so when our writing process, a lot of the time we start just playing something and whatever sounds good to us, we like. We don't stick to exactly funk, right? But sometimes it comes out rock, sometimes it comes out like a D'Angelo tune. We have no idea what it's gonna be. And for a listener to hear that potential, how important is it to have that sort of niche in what you're playing, what your style is?
I think put yourself in the position of the listener, right? If you're doing so much that it's confusing, if you were the listener, would you be confused? So you should be able to visualize who you want your audience to be. And what is it that they are going to want to hear from you? Are they going to want to say, hey, let's go see that great band because we know what we're going to expect? Or are they going to say, those guys are all over the place? You know, they should pick a lane.
Hi, my name is Derek Brown, part of a group called Copacetic, along with Ed Hill, sax, guitar. My question, mainly for you. You said something earlier about releasing music, not releasing it all at the same time, just kind of just piecemealing it out, trying to see how people feel about it. Does it matter as far as the genre is concerned? As far as that's concerned, then my other question is from the standpoint of, I can't remember it, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely plays into the part. There's different schools of thought too, right? Like, it depends again, like what you're trying to do. Is it a full project? Like, if you had a vision for this project, right? And it had a theme and one song went into the other and it had a whole entire package that it came in, you wouldn't want to piecemeal that or put it together in that way. I think it's kind of just looking at it, you know, looking at it like a painting, right? Like, what part of this could stand alone and what part of this absolutely needs to connect together. I would say, and this is only selfishly just from my point of view, which could be completely different than Pete's, really, it's worth it to put a song out just to see what people think. And also thinking about where you're putting it out, right? Like, there's so many places to put your music out at this point. And there's so many different, it's really tough for me to give you like a very straightforward answer because there's so many different schools of thought. Like, I've had an artist that I work with that I wanted to develop her presence, so I wanted to only put her music on SoundCloud for a little bit so that there was a need for it, right? And people were like, oh, she's popping here. Wonder why she's not everywhere else, right? And there were a few tracks that we kept dropping only on SoundCloud, whereas we weren't doing that prior, but I just wanted to see, could it turn up a little heat, and could people then understand a different kind of narrative from that strategy, right? And that was just the particular way that we did it for her, and I think that it worked because it helped to build a little bit of like momentum for her and build this like cool indie presence. I think you should try it. It doesn't hurt to try. If you're not super precious with a particular piece of music, why not? Like, you don't really have anything to lose at this point. And if you're not pressing CDs, which is the very expensive financial part of this, there isn't much to lose, right? And then getting that feedback kind of helps you in the direction. And like, if you don't care about that feedback, by the way, like, you know, like dude before who was like, oh, I just want to play this music and I really like this. Look, it's your fucking art, man. Don't let anybody tell you it's not right if you believe it in your heart, right? So like, it's worth it to put it out there. And if you don't care what anyone else thinks, whatever.
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys so much for coming. Thanks for the commission for bringing such an awesome event. And I guess to echo some of the same things you guys have been saying, I really appreciate hearing, you know, quality is still kind of the most important thing in general, even though it is great to hear, but it is great to hear the old school and the new school thing. I realize you're coming from hip hop, and I realize you're coming from a different world in general, but one of the things that, I mean, just, I have a lot of friends that are in hip hop, and they school me all the time. Like, I'll put out a video, and they'll say, like, bro, where are your tags at? And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yes, they're right.
Well, two of my best friends in high school started livemixtapes.com. So I was...
Pesh?
Yeah, Pesh and Thomas. So exactly. So, like, when I was growing up, these cats were always talking to me about, you know, how do you stay, once you get content that pops, how do you stay there? Like, once you get on a playlist, once you get on New Music Friday, how do you stay on New Music Friday? Like, what are some things that you guys do for your artists to help them stay, once you gain attention, once you do have something that pops, like, what are some of the things you can do to stay there?
Content, touring.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it.
Is there one, I guess, what are some things that you see on the marketing side that are big no-nos from the top, from big artists to small artists? Like, what are some things that drive you nuts? Like, what are some things that you still see big problems? Like,
we don't got enough time for those kind of
okay, that's kind of what I figured.
No, I mean, like, that's exactly it. It's like content and touring, right? Because your content is going to keep reaching your masses while you're like dormant. And then the touring helps you actually build those real fans that we've been talking about. You know, it's interesting because especially in the hip hop space, like, you know, I've been working in hip hop for like like a decade plus at this point, and I grew up in the hood in Jersey, a rock chick who also listened to hip hop. So like I've understood the grassroots like community around hip hop for a very long time, and they've always been so smart about the way that they've been able to market and get things together and build communities. And I think that hasn't changed, right? Like hip hop is a community, and you have to be able to kind of like foster it. So like the live aspect of it cannot be discounted too. And I think that it's one area actually in hip hop that a lot of artists do need to focus a little bit more on. It's not just going out and the show is crazy, everyone's going nuts. Like, are you delivering a quality performance? Is your visual show fucking phenomenal, right? I don't know who saw Travis Scott's Netflix special. Some people in here, I'm hoping. But like, it was really interesting to kind of just see the stage show and see how crazy some of the shows were. But that, you know, that's no small feat. There's years of practice and effort that's put into that, right? Like, you got to get it up to that particular place, and it's like a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of gaining fans, little by little by little. So I think that those are the things that help keep it afloat. And yeah, like trying different marketing tactics, trying different, I don't want to say stunts because I think that's just a corny word, but like stunt-like events, you know, trying to rally around specific like things that you're putting out, rally around a song. We'll put out a song and works various digital campaigns to help build the heat around it, right? Because at the end of the day, we want people to stream the song. We want people to build an affinity and always be on this particular record or be on a particular album. So it's everything, literally everything to keep it going.
My name is Xander, local EDM producer in the scene. And my question has to do something that you said, Pete. You said, you know, going over, you know, bringing around the right people that, you know, you want to bring into your flock. You know, you want to make sure you have the right team around you. You want to make sure you have the right people around you, that everyone, you know, everyone's above the board, everyone's, you know, straightforward, everyone understands the goal. You kind of spoke about it earlier, the red flags, you know, that would come up in a situation like that. And I just kind of want to have you speak a little more to that in terms of, you know, the people that you bring around, the people that, you know, you have in your flock. But again, I want to thank you both for coming out here, and I very much appreciate it for having this happen. But yes, that's my question.
I think you've got to ask yourself, what is each person on my team contributing to my project? And if there's one person that you can't answer, then they probably don't deserve to be on your team. I can't tell you how frustrating it is when you're trying to break an artist, which is very, very, very hard to do. If there is a weak link in the chain, it is immediately apparent. And for some reason, I've been working with a bunch of artists this year who are all firing their managers. And it's tricky because then we have to help them with everything that a manager would do, but sometimes they have to learn the hard way. So it's up to you to decide, okay, what is this person adding to the team? And if it's a real tangible addition that you feel is going to help you in the long term, great. If not, then that's a question you need to ask yourself.
I used to say that I used to cringe when an artist that I really wanted to sign would come in with a buffoon as a manager. I say a record man is like a hound dog. They can smell from which way the game is and which way the garbage is. So it's important that you're better off doing it yourself. There's a lot of people that are on your way up that will embrace you because they love what you do. That doesn't mean they're qualified. And one of the questions I always tell an artist to ask any prospective manager is, what's your plan? And then shut up and listen.
Hi, my name is Devin. I'm a rapper and a producer, and I currently live in Columbus, Ohio. My question is for the lady on the end. It's
Zeena, by the way.
I'm sorry.
The lady on the end.
Gotcha. Sorry about
I
that.
have a name.
Gotcha. I'm sorry about that.
It's all good.
It was going back to kind of what you were saying when you mentioned with the artists that you were working with, who were just posting songs on SoundCloud specifically and exclusively. Would you suggest for artists that are starting to release music in a more consistent manner to just release on one platform and then drive traffic to that one place, or post on everything, like put it on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, or just put it on like somewhere like SoundCloud where you can just drive all the traffic to that one single place?
Again, it's tricky, right? Like, I'm very cautious to give you guys very specific advice like this because it's something that we diagnose as a team and kind of talk through. Like, there are a lot of people these kind of thoughts kind of shift through in order for us to get those things over the line, right? Some people don't like the idea, some people are about the idea, but collectively, you know, between digital marketing, A&R, we kind of talk through these things and think about like how we would sculpt a trajectory for an artist like that. From a personal standpoint, not even talking on that side, it kind of makes sense to me, depending on what kind of artist you are, to like build within a community. Some people's school of thoughts are be everywhere because you never know where someone's gonna find you, but it just, again, it depends. I mean, right now is kind of a good time to be a little bit of everywhere, but if you have a specific kind of music, it may make sense depending on the community, right? EDM, hip hop, really big on SoundCloud. So maybe it makes sense to, again, put it out there and see how it performs. Once it starts bubbling a little bit there, then maybe you start releasing it on all the other platforms and just give it a little bit of kind of a runway, right? Because again, I think that sometimes people drop their music and think, fuck, I'm not famous tomorrow, what happened here, right? That's not how it works. Like, you have to give things time to bubble. You know, sometimes there's tracks that are out like, what, a year, 2 years, and then out of nowhere, they start to really pick up because the artist starts gaining some momentum.
Look at what happened with Lizzo.
Exactly.
You know, Lizzo, Truth Hurts, was out for a long time, got synced on a Netflix show. Next thing you know, it's the biggest song in the world. You just have to double down on your art and then be patient.
Thank you.
Give it a shot.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks again for being here. I'm Angela, and I manage a band called Tay and the Wave. I wanted to go back, you were talking about shows and how important that is, and just the touring aspect of things when you are an unsigned artist. And obviously that can require a lot of resources and energy and money. And how important is that to, you know, I think back in the day before the digital age, you used to, you know, the grassroots efforts of like playing college towns and just get in your van and get on the road. But now, I mean, how important is it to just try to play shows nationally in cities where you maybe don't have a fan base? Is it important to grow it in the one city where you are and keep going back to that same well over and over again and then start to expand that slowly, or just?
I think it's about being the best at what you do where you are. And if that means that you're going to play shows locally, as long as there's that incremental growth that we've been talking about, that's what it's about. You know, you shouldn't really feel like you need to do it nationally if that's not in the scope of what the band's doing at this moment right now.
You know, you can also, there are a lot of bands that want to play outside the market. And there are mechanisms to do that. Like, they will gig share. If they've got a following here, they'll approach a band that wants to play Columbus, they'll put them on to open their show, and then if that band's got a following, let's say in Cincinnati, the process will reverse. You really should network with other managers. You can't network with too many people. You should be all over the place. Very involved in what the community you want to be successful in is all about. Like, again, we have promoters here that play local acts all the time. You've got the Angela Pearlies, you've got Cousin Simply, you've got the Floorwalkers, you've got this multiplicity of acts.
You've got to go out and hustle, because if you don't, somebody else is going to out hustle you.
Touring is important, in my opinion. That's how you gain your fans face to face. And the other cool thing about touring right now, actually, is if you do have a digital presence, say you're on Spotify, say you're on YouTube, you can regionally see where people are listening to your music. So you can make more conscious decisions and more economical decisions, especially as a band, because you have more equipment. There's more money that it takes to tour as a band, instead of just kind of shooting in the dark, right? Back in the day, you kind of like hope that people in that community really dig you, and then you see when ticket sales come in and may not be what you think. But like, you can make those founded decisions. I think it's really important, doesn't matter what genre of music you're in. like that face-to-face time, and if your band is tight, like people will remember that experience and remember meeting that artist and care.
Hi, my name is Cartier Pitts, and I'm also a senior at OSU. I'm an arts management major, and I've actually started my own LLC, getting into the management side. And in the past year, I've already faced, like, you know, a lot of losses, a lot of things that didn't work out. And you two are obviously very successful at what you do, but you've had to have some stumbles along your way. So how exactly do you take that information and pivot? Whether it's like a touring decision, a video decision, like how do you keep on going forward?
That's a good question.
It is. I've been laid off twice, for sure. Once was a bad time in the economy in general, but I got laid off of Roadrunner Records once and came back, ironically, to the same company, and got laid off of Sirius because they just eliminated every DJ on the channel. So I didn't get a chance to say bye. I did my last show and left after 6.5 years, you know? And I think that those moments kind of show you, okay, like you gut check yourself then, like, do I really, really want this, right? Because especially in management, you're investing your time, your effort, your heart, your money in somebody's career, right? And it could pay off in an incredible way and could be really a life and soul fulfilling, you know, thing for you, but could also be soul shattering, right? So I think it's kind of like and sorry, I know you're young, so I don't want to like beat you down, but like, I don't know what else I would have done in my life if I wasn't working in music, right? Like, as a musician, like, this has been my like dream to just be able to live it rooted in that practice for such a long time. You just gotta kind of dust yourself off and look at the factors that led to that failure right? You know, I buy a lot of self-help books because it's really interesting just to hear other people's perspectives or just understand like what helps get other people to get through things. And I think like a lot of self-care has to go into those moments when you have a thing that you assess to be a failure, right? And looking at the good things you can extract from it. Like maybe you went into it with pure heart, but maybe you could have been smarter at like X, Y, and Z decision, right? Now you know next time, like Pete said, like those red flags that you could have seen coming but you didn't know existed, right? Like that's just life. And you're gonna keep learning. And you're smart to get the LLC because the government does not fuck around, so that's a smart idea. But you learn along the way, you know? And sometimes, somebody has put it to me very well, some days you're the dog and some days you're the hydrant.
Love that.
Pick wisely.
Okay, I wanted to say that we're having our next Music Business Mondays, October 28th. Look for it. If you're not signed up for our mailing list, go to musiccolumbus.com. Don't keep us a secret. Share it with your musician friends. Make sure people come because this is the free university. This is tuitionless university for Columbus. Next year we'll be having actual workshops. We'll have them on weekends so everyone can bring their pads and pencils and learn real specific traits or trade of the business. And also we have an initiative called Music Everywhere. And what we're doing is we are speaking to every promoter, every venue, including the convention center, including the hotels, including Experience Columbus, to be able to provide entertainment and give you guys an opportunity to make some money. So make sure you register online. Go to the Greater Columbus Arts Council, GCAC's website, register with they call the Street Artist Performers database. Get in there because we're only going to basically pick from artists that are registered. We want to keep it tight. And I want to give a round of applause and thank our speakers, Pete and Zeena. Thanks very much. Now, go buy a drink, enjoy your evening, and drive home safe.